you know, Chaz excuses himself, and he's like, "Hey, where are you going?" He's like, "Oh, basically says I'm gonna go visit my wife." He's like, "Oh yeah, that's right. We got another body buried out here."
And he goes down and takes some of the flowers for his mom, and he's like, "Here you go." And then he stays behind with what's his name, Pagoda, Royal's as kind of assistant, or
Pagoda,
yeah, who has also passed away, Kumar Palana, I think.
Yeah, and he was another one of the same players in Wes Anderson movies. That, if I remember the research and the trivia I was looking up, he worked as a barista at Anderson's favorite coffee shop.
Oh,
and that's how Anderson knew him. And then he's in Bottle Rocket, he's in Rushmore, he's in Royal Tenenbaums. He's not in The Life Aquatic, but he is in the Darjeeling Limited.
Yeah, Pagoda is a very underrated character. He's funny. he's
got some really funny lines, and when the scene where he's stabbed. Because you learn that how Royal knows Pagoda.
Yeah.
Is, Pagoda was basically a hired assassin, or there was a bounty on, he had a price on his head, and Pagoda was the one to try to kill him to collect the bounty. And he stabbed him, and then felt bad, so he carried him to safety.
You son of a bitch.
And then later on in the film, after Royal is found out for being full of shit, that he's kicked out of the house, him and Pagoda, because Pagoda was in on it with him. And there's that scene out on the street where they're waiting for the cab, and you just see Pagoda pull out the little Swiss Army knife and then proceed to stab him in the stomach. and then Royal, after getting stabbed, says, "That's the last time you put a knife in me."
I was surprised he didn't go to the hospital for that, because they're just in the like hotel or motel, and he's just kind of doctoring him up.
Yeah, he figured even with the puncture wound, even with a small knife, you should probably go get some real medical help. He's basically just putting peroxide on it.
Yeah.
And then you have, I think our last character is Raleigh St. Clair, who is Bill Murray, who is a writer and neurologist. He has a book where he's kind of studying the neurological disorder of these natives on an island. That's the book that he's famous for. But then his next book, he's studying this weird kid named Dudley, where he's convinced that he has this syndrome where he has like amnesia, dyslexia, color blindness, acute sense of hearing, which is a really funny bit because Dudley's like in some other room. He's like, "Wait, am I colorblind?" And he just looks at him and says, "Yes, I'm afraid you are." But he does this really funny experiment with them where he has these blocks and he's like, make yours like mine. And, he just needs to replicate the pattern.
And he does something completely different, right?
Yeah, it's hilarious because he's concentrating so hard on it. And Raleigh's watching him and he's like, "Okay, done." And it's some completely different pattern.
That reminds me of the opening of Ghostbusters, actually.
When he's doing the...
Yeah, when he's fucking with
cards.
that guy. Yeah.
I just love that bit where the blocks look nothing like his pattern.
And he's just like, "All right."
He's just like, "How fascinating." Dudley's great. Dudley has probably my favorite book cover that they show at in the epilogue.
Oh,
when
yeah.
he actually comes out with the book, and it's just Dudley, and he's got the most blank, dopey expression on his face on the book cover.
So Gwyneth Paltrow plays Margot. Although I have my issues with Gwyneth Paltrow as a person, she does a really good job in this. I like her kind of her deadpan sensibility, where she just doesn't care about anything. She's got the heavy mascara the entire time, or eyeliner. Definitely, like, how do you say, like, her fashion sense is very distinct in this, as everybody's is, but I think she stands out in a kind of unique way, I guess you would say. And her.
Do you notice that? I believe in the main narrative of the film, not the flashbacks or the cutaways and inserts, but in the actual main narrative, that everyone is always in the exact same clothes.
Yes, it's like a cartoon almost.
Yeah.
They never have to do wardrobe changes.
There's only a few times when they're not, and I don't know. I believe they're always in the same clothes, with the exception of the cutaways and the inserts, and we know what they're wearing in the epilogue and the prologue. Everyone but Royal changes. Royal changes,
and I wanted to ask you, do you think it's weird how effortlessly he's able to change when he's been caught? When they're like, oh yeah, like, you've been lying, you don't have stomach cancer. And then he's like, oh shit. And then he goes in the other room and he changes into his 3-piece suit, like, in what feels like less than a minute.
out of the hospital.
Yeah, gown.
The hospital clothes. And into his 3-piece suit pretty effortlessly.
And of course, I know that's, good editing, but it's just like, that's so hilarious that he's just like, well, I've been caught, and then he just has his stuff all ready. Like, yeah. I knew this was coming. Or when Henry goes up to him, because they have this kind of blowout in the kitchen. And then Danny Glover's character, Henry, gets mad, and then he's like, well, I'm going to go investigate Royal's medicine because I think he's bluffing. And then he figures out that, like, his primary doctor, all this stuff is all made up, and he has, like, Tic Tacs as the pills.
Oh, God, the Tic Tac reveal.
And then he goes upstairs to Goda's room, and he's like... Pagoda, yep. And he's like, hey, like, tell me what's happening.
What's he paying you?
Yeah, or what's he paying you? And then Pagoda just looks at him and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, it's this whole ruse that Royal is dying, and he supposedly has stomach cancer, and Sherman is the one to call him out on it because he catches him, eating a burger. The doctor isn't really the doctor; it's the elevator operator from the hotel that Royal was living in. He's just the way that he acts as the doctor is super suspicious. Like, they should have been on to him right away, because he just, like, take a deep breath, now cough, and he's talking to him about what to do, and just keep taking the cancer medication and he'll be okay. And if you know anything about cancer, you know that it's definitely not just taking pills. Yeah. So it's that whole scene where he's talking to him in the hall and telling him what to do, and then the beeper goes off, and he grabs the beeper like it's some important medical thing, and it's just a message from the boss saying, hey, can you work this shift? He's all doing it like he's super important. And then when, Danny Glover calls him out on it, it's, this doctor doesn't exist. Colby General, the hospital closed 20 years ago. Which, speaking of the 70s, all the clothes look like they're from the 70s.
The soundtrack.
The soundtrack has a lot of older music. The soundtrack is incredible in this film.
As is a lot of Anderson's soundtracks, I feel like he's really good. Another one that's really good at that.
Yeah, he's great, man. I have all of them, just like I have all the Tarantino soundtracks. And, like, this one, has like so much different stuff on it. It's got The Clash, it's got Paul Simon, it's got Bob Dylan. Van Morrison is the song at the end, the Rolling Stones, the Nico songs. Good Lord, the Nico songs in this movie, the two songs that she has on the soundtrack are amazing. These Days, which plays in the beginning when Margot steps off the bus to pick up Richie from the terminal, or the pier. And then at the very end, it's playing Fairest of the Seasons plays over the epilogue. They're both incredible songs.
Elliott Smith, we forgot.
Yes.
During Richie's suicide scene, which is pretty brutal, or ends up being pretty brutal. And
I don't know if he had struggled with those thoughts and everything before, and that's why the song plays there, because that's what that song was referring to. I don't know if that was the case.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Elliott Smith did commit suicide, but that was 2 or 3 years after Tenenbaums came out. But just going back to the 70s thing, the look, the aesthetic, even like a lot of the camera movements are something that you would very much find like in a 70s film.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this a couple months ago with Ronin having a lot of those type of camera movements. And Royal Tenenbaums definitely has them, especially with the kind of zoom and finding someone, like in frame. You see it a few times in the movie. Most notably when Ari and Uzi are at the 375th Street Y, playing like on the Jungle Gym, and then they hear the whistle from Royal, and it like zooms in on them. But yeah, very much a 70s inspiration in the film.
It seems like for most of the dialogue that they're using only one camera. Is that a fair assumption?
No, that's absolutely true. There's a lot of one takes, or not one take, but one shot with no cuts.
Yeah.
Or the camera will pan and zoom back and forth. And it's a lot of what Wes Anderson is known for now. At the time that was a little fresh.
Yeah.
For him, because he'd only made two other movies prior, but a lot of the camera work. He does a lot of long takes. He's very much inspired by someone like Hitchcock and Orson Welles, whom, if you've ever seen The Magnificent Ambersons, this movie very much is inspired by that film, which is like this great family that kind of has this dysfunction to them and kind of has their downfall. And Orson Welles did a lot of those camera works. Like Wes Anderson is someone very much where you're very aware that there is a director. Not that it's a bad thing, not that it calls attention to itself, but there's a director, and certain shots are set up certain ways, and there's certain camera movements and long takes. Yeah, like that's his aesthetic. Is those type of shots and the camera movement, and like I said, very much inspired by directors like Alfred Hitchcock and Orson Welles and Martin Scorsese. But there's a lot of one shots, or everything is happening in one take. There's not a whole lot of cuts in certain scenes. I mean, there's not a whole lot of cuts in Wes Anderson films in general, but in the Royal Tenenbaums, there's a lot of longer scenes, which I think really kind of brings you into the performance, because instead of cutting every 2 or 3 seconds, you're sitting there watching, this conversation between two people, or watching this action take place. And it kind of brings you right into the movie and right into that scene, when you're not aware of, we need to cut every 2 or 3 seconds, and cut into a close-up for this line, or cut into a wide shot for this line. And I think that's part of the beauty of the Wes Anderson movies. That's a very Stanley Kubrick thing too.
Yeah, it's like a bit more immersive.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.